I don't think we will see Sonicon near the front of the races. Of course, she's had slow starts before, and it all came good when she ended up winning the Worlds. But I think we're past that era of her career.
Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today you are joined by myself, Noah from the Cycling Games channel, and Tom from the Cyclocross Social Instagram page, and Twan is also here. He is a big cyclocross fan. Today we're going to take a look at the upcoming cyclocross season. There's no way we can go around it. COVID-19. It's been dominating the news and it's also been dominating the cyclocross already. The first two ATS crosses of this season were without spectators, and so will Gieten be this season. However, there is more bad news that got announced yesterday. 3 more World Cups got cancelled. After Waterloo, Dublin, Koksijde, Briançon and Antwerpen got cancelled, yesterday also Villars and Hogerheide got cancelled. Tom and Twan, what do you think? Will there still be a World Cup this season?
Well, I'm quite confident we'll have some races, but obviously it really just depends on how the situation develops. You've seen here in Belgium, we have organisers who are very committed. We've already had 2 successful ATS cross races, so hopefully we'll see some more World Cups, but it just depends because I think it's more about the cost to the organisers as well as the potential safety risk with COVID virus.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a thing. I think it's really hard for organizers to have to deal with organizing the cross without having all the entry fees, which makes the sport COVID-proof, but it also is probably like the main income of the sport, which, well, that's why we're seeing venues like Hogerheide drop out of the World Cup. I will really miss some of those races, but at the same time, I really dislike the World Cup reform that they had put in for this season. So I'm kind of happy to see that one failing.
Yeah, you talked about the new World Cup, and I think personally that this new World Cup is actually costing these races, because Adrie van der Poel today said in an interview with a Dutch paper that they already needed to pay €150,000 entrance fee. And besides that, because they needed security and all extra regulations to prevent COVID-19 from coming into the course, that it would cost about €300,000 and they could only get around €100,000 from sponsors. So there's no way that you can make these cyclocross races go on with €200,000 debt in a year, because they don't really make that much profit at the end of the day.
Yes, indeed. I would have liked to see perhaps the UCI step in and reduce the €150,000 cost for a single round. I think we should just be trying to have as many opportunities as possible to race, and it seems the financial barrier implemented is the main reason at the moment for causing more races to be removed from the calendar.
Yeah, what's also interesting is that the cross in Villars was cancelled, and that one was actually organized by the UCI. So I think it's a bit of a strange sign that the UCI is saying, yeah, we're trying to do everything to keep the races going on, but at the same time they cancelled their own race. So apparently either they're in big financial trouble or they don't really care too much. I don't know how you guys see that.
Villars was supposed to be in Switzerland, right?
Yes.
So then they might just have had to deal with local governments just plainly not allowing such an event.
Yes, well, but obviously the World Championship as well was meant to be in Switzerland and near the HQ of the UCI for the road wars. So, and they obviously had to cancel that and reschedule to Imola, which was of course a great race, but I'm sure the UCI would have liked to have seen it in Switzerland on their home territory and to promote themselves, the organisation and the region of Switzerland, more than the race in Italy. So I guess it's probably reasons outside of their control, you'd like to hope, which is why they've had to cancel the race rather than them internally saying we don't want to run it anymore, because I think that would be really bad for the discipline and the sport if actually the governing body is pulling out completely.
Yeah, however, there's now only a few races left on the calendar, and the Flanders Classic, who organized the World Cup, have said that Zonhoven is already unsure. They're still in talks, and they're not sure that it can go through. Tabor and Hulst, which are hosted in Czech Republic and the Netherlands respectively, both are in countries where the coronavirus situation isn't under control at the moment. These races could be in trouble as well. What do you think will happen with these races? Do you think they can go on, or do you see these races being cancelled as well?
I think for Hulst particularly, we saw with the Bing Bang Tour that the Dutch stages got cancelled, and I don't know the exact date for Hulst, but
It's somewhere in
doesn't look too good.
January or end of December.
Yeah, okay, by then it could be a little better, but I'm not sure. It'll be hard.
Yeah,
indeed,
Hulst is on 3 January, so indeed it's still far away, but go on, Tom.
Yeah, I'm not so confident for those races. We've seen the Dutch authorities have taken quite a hard stance, which is good on them, but also to be a bit more flexible. Like the Bing Bang Tour to cancel so late was clearly a bit controversial and logistically a big issue. But I can see if they're taking this stance, then the organisers will not be wanting to commit such a financial risk that the race might not be able to go ahead. So, and Czech Republic, we've obviously seen they're one of the worst hit countries now. It's really on the rise, but you know, a lot can change in 2 months for the good and for the bad. But I think committing such a big cost at this time is really risky, not only for big races and the World Cups, but also smaller organisers even have to pay out, and even if it's only like €5,000 or €10,000 for a smaller UCI event or even a local race, it can be still like a really high percentage of their bank balance. For example, if they're on a smaller scale than the World Cup, then obviously their finances are in a less strong situation prior to the event anyway. So.
Yes, we already saw that with the Cyclocross Social being cancelled. It was supposed to be in December, and just this weekend there was supposed to be a cross in Slovakia, the Grand Prix Rakova, but it got cancelled as well. However, Flanders Classic said they are still confident that there will be more races, that they can get a new calendar out soon, but personally I don't really see that much options. I don't know how it's with you, Tom, but most of the races are already committed to a contract, so they would need to find a new location, perhaps.
Yes, indeed. I think it's hard with the organizational situation as well. It obviously takes up a large amount of time, and you've seen quite a lot of organizers willing to kind of run a race at a loss or like for no profit. Because you have to remember these are businesses as well, the individual organizers, and you could think that perhaps there might be interest from the outside. You might think there'd be interest to go back to some of these venues. We saw in Kruibeke last weekend, there was a really nice new venue they had there, and you might be thinking, why not return for another round this year if it was a success? But lots of these races are individual organizers. It's a lot of work, and also different municipalities here in Belgium also like to have their own race in their own town. So another organizer to move location across the country to one of these more corona-proof locations might not be such an easy task.
Yeah, Twan came up with a pretty good solution earlier today when I was talking with him. He said like the UCI stepped in for the mountain bike, and in Novo Mesto they organized a bunch of races on one venue in Novo Mesto.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So they had the 2 rounds of the World Cup in Novo Mesto, and for the second one they changed the parcours, and I mean, it's not the most ideal situation, but it is certainly something that the UCI should also be considering in cyclocross it's not that. I think it's quite easy to do in a sport like cyclocross. I mean, we could even ride the parcours in reverse. Maybe it would be a bit hard with like the trails getting created, but that should definitely be something they could consider.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be quite a possibility in the US and Canada, especially. Riders have to travel much more, and there's less races on the calendar, so they always have a double race weekend. And you see some quite creative courses running in the opposite direction. Makes it a bit more interesting. Obviously, some obstacles like the stairs, you cannot go down, but you can always work around small things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be an interesting option, and maybe they could also have like this corona-proof bubble as we've seen at multiple sport events, and then I think the risk would be reduced by a quite big amount. But of course, there would need to be the financial situation for that. But let's just hope that we have a normal season. After these first two races in the ETIAS Cross, this weekend the Super Prestige in Gieten is on the planning. This one will go on without any spectators, just like we saw in the first one. And this is, for me personally, when the cyclocross season really starts with Gieten, because before that you've had this year only two ETIAS crosses, which are mainly a warm-up. The big guys like in the women's Vorst and Alvarado will now only start their season in Gieten. Usually you've also had the States before. Well, this year they were cancelled, but in Gieten it's really when the big guys come at the start. But what do you guys think? Which riders have impressed you in the beginning of the season in the men's race?
I mean, for now, the men's race is really just three names at the front. Laurens Sweek, Toon Aerts and Elie Isebiet. And I think the one that has impressed me most is Laurens Sweek, just because he seems to have made a small step closer to the both of those, both of his competitors. And I think we'll see a lot of fun right there.
Yeah, I think it's been a kind of three horse race at the front, I guess. And maybe you'll expect the same again this weekend in Heaton. But I'm thinking Tom Pidcock will soon be making his debut, probably sooner than Mathieu and Wout. And obviously, he's just taken the World Championship mountain bike. Yes, it was the e-bike category. But also, this weekend, I see him as a strong favourite for the race. And having won the last two rounds of the Mountain Bike World Cup under 23 as well. And he also took the Giro under 23. So I can only see him being at the front of the races this year. So it should be really interesting.
Yeah,
I actually didn't know he was participating.
No, I think he isn't starting this round in Gieten, but I think
Yes.
it is. He said that he was going to do cyclocross this winter. Of course, he also made a transfer to Ineos, but he will still be riding for Trintini in the beginning of the season. And
Indeed. I think he will soon be making his appearance much quicker than Mathieu.
Yeah, I think that as well, and I agree. Last year, he of course got second at the World Championship. He was there when he wanted to be there, and he's a young guy, so theoretically he should have been able to make a step. And he isn't the only young guy. Personally, for me, Niels van der Putten has impressed me. He got the top 10, I think, twice in both ETIAS crosses. The guy is only 20 or 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, and Thibaut Nice, obviously, he had a puncher in his first race in Baden, and then I think it was outside the top 15 in the first round of the ETS cross. But last week, a really strong fifth place finish for him, so I think the podium will be the aim soon.
Yeah, I think that as well, because
to see.
Yeah, in Dutch there's a saying, the riders who are good, they come fast, and I think Thibaut Nice certainly showed that. After the first race in Belgium, there were quite a few people disappointed. Well, still he got 16th or 17th. It's not bad. He's in his first race with the pros. He's only a first year under 23, but in the second race he came all the way from the back of the field, got into a group for 7th place, passed all of them, and then went on to get 5th, not far behind Lars van der Haar. And I think it also shows a trend, because after the first race, a lot of people said, yeah, Telenet Fidea missed their start of their season, Brandt wasn't good enough, Arch wasn't good enough because he finished second, 1 minute behind Iserbyt. Nijs wasn't there, Van der Haar wasn't there, but in the second race in Kruibeke, they really made up for it because Arch and Brandt won, Van der Haar got fourth, Nijs got fifth.
Indeed, yes. Certainly they were much more on the case, but it interesting, the Credit Shop Freestads team rebranded from Creathin last year. We've seen in the women's team, they seem to have taken the season really by storm, coming in a really surprise victory for Annick van Alphen in the first round, and obviously Manon Bakker also in second place, both new recruits for the team, so you can expect them to be competitive in the women's race as well.
Yes, I definitely think these are some new kids on the block. In Kruibeke, they weren't there for the win, but still a fourth and a fifth place. They definitely made some steps, and personally, I think it's really nice to see that they were both jumping the barriers. You can really see that they trained on it because they jumped them at quite decent speed. And obviously, they were competing with some more experienced riders like Brandt, Kastelein, and Betsema. But I think that these are definitely two names that we should keep an eye on for this season.
Indeed, and obviously in the women's race, more especially, the field's much more open. We've had many more exciting battles at the front in the last few years of the women's race. You can never really put a rider who's going to guarantee the win, like Mathieu in the men's race, winning 95% of his races last year, but in the women's it's much more open field, and yeah, the racing is really exciting, so it's definitely one to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, you saw it in Kruibeke where Kastelein was leading for large portions of the race, and Lucinda Brandt just the last lap decides to become Usain Bolt.
Yeah,
Runs
indeed.
straight
And you,
past.
as a cyclocross fan, I mean, Tom and I, we more watch it with like an analyzing eye because Tom, of course, he also has his own cyclocross team. But you, as a fan of the sport, you must enjoy this ladies' races as well.
I honestly think they are better than the men's races. As you said previously, it's so much more open. So many more people can win, and you actually get surprised sometimes.
But then what do you think about Sanne Kant? Obviously, last season she didn't have her easiest season, and she always has a slow start to the season, but this year again she looks to be way off the pace. Both times more than 1.5 minutes off the winner.
I I don't think we will see Sonicon near the front of the races. Of course, she's had slow starts before, and it all came good when she ended up winning the Worlds. But I think we're past that era of her career.
Then Tom, in Kruibeke, in the women's race, there was a British girl, Zoe Barkstead, the son of the road cyclist Barkstead. The daughter, I'm sorry. She finished 14th. She made a transfer. Can you tell us a bit more about her?
Yes, well, very, very talented young British rider. Obviously, daughter of Paris-Roubaix winner himself, Magnus Barkstead. And yes, she's ridden for the Story Racing team the last few years and has won multiple British titles. We are talking the 15 times British champion. Now, I think it was maybe a small surprise to see signing for Akrog Tormans, whether you could argue there's potentially better team out there for her, with Millie Cousins also joining the Eco Krellen team. So it's great to see two junior British women will now also be riding on the Belgium scene.
Yeah, and she's only 16 years old, so who do you think, if you were to name one under 23 rider, would you choose her then to keep an eye on this season, or would you then maybe pick somebody else?
Well, certainly Anna Kay will be right up there again. We saw her right in the front of the race last weekend and a strong finish as well. But yes, I think Zoe Barkstead, you will see her coming in the top 10 later in the year, I'm guessing. Again, same problem as Thibaut Nice, starting from the back of the grid. is never easy, especially in the larger fields. But she certainly has the power and the technique, so I would expect big things from her in the future.
And Twan, what about you? Who would you pick to keep an eye on this season?
There are so many good U23 riders in the women's category. I'm just looking for the Kruibeke result right now, and I see a Luxembourgian woman, 17 years old, and she finished 11th in Kruibeke. And I have never really seen her before, but if she can keep this up, maybe she can ride some top tens this season.
I did see her last year. I was at the World Championships in Dubendorf. Actually, this is the beginning of this year. I saw her in the top 10, and it surprised me as well because I'd never seen somebody from Luxembourg doing really good in cyclocross apart from Margerus, but I didn't see really any talents coming through. But I saw her then, and she finished 9th then. Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Apparently developing really well because an 11th spot at the elites is something to be very proud of.
Yeah, and like you said, there's so many big talents coming through. But before we're going to make some predictions, I would like to take a look at the new announced program of Mathieu van der Poel. It got announced today. Mathieu van der Poel has already announced to be riding 6 crosses. These are Antwerpen, Loenhout, Baal and Hamme. These are all for the DVV Trophy. Besides that, he is confirmed to start Namur, which is a World Cup, and Bredene, which is a Etias Cross. He also said that more races will follow and he will focus on the World Championships but not riding too many races, and he will only be active in December and January. What do you guys think?
Well, I think not riding too many races has worked for him previously. Over the last few years, he's reduced his calendar a bit, and he's not going to have many races to choose from. I think it's going to be the real kind of thing over Christmas period. Normally there's been 10, 15 races between kind of Christmas and the World Champs to choose from, whereas now I think we'll be looking at kind of 4 or 5, so it might be we see him every week. And it could be really interesting if how other riders fare as you enter the kind of Christmas cyclocross period. If some riders who would have previously raced kind of 10 races in 15 days, if they only have 3 to choose from, they might be much fresher and it may play to their advantage, but it may not. They may not have the race speed in the legs or the big block of training over the Christmas period of lots of racing. So I think we can expect to still see Mathieu on top, but it will be very interesting how he fares against the other riders.
I think the lack of tiredness will certainly help him, but only starting to cross in December, it might be a bit hard. We don't know how COVID is going to develop and how many races there will be to actually choose from. So he might be in for an ugly surprise, getting into the cross even later than he anticipated. So I think it's a little bit of a risk, but I think he has got so much raw talent that he certainly, of course, will be up there for the world title and probably the main favorite, even if it was just his first cross of the year.
Indeed, and we cannot forget Wout van Aert either, winner Tour de France stages, Strade Bianchi, and I think obviously last year he had his crash in the Tour de France, which kind of wrote off his cyclocross season. But we did see him in a few of the races near the end of the year have a nice few battles with Mathieu, and I'm really hopeful we could see January. We could see some old jewels like we used to see, Geaton coming up this weekend. We all remember that epic finish with them running through the sand and Van Aert's chain falling off at the final. So I'm really hopeful we might see a few more of those this year.
Yeah, I hope that as well. But I'm personally not too sure how many races Wout van Aert will actually ride. He really looks to have shifted his focus towards road cycling. But on the other hand, he does look to have this deep passion inside. After the Tour de France, when lockdown started, I saw on Strava that he did a few rides on his cyclocross bike and that he really enjoyed it. How many races do you think he would ride, and when do you think he would actually enter the field?
Well, I think for me he will do an entry in December, January time as well. probably like what Stibar normally does as well. I could see him doing maybe 3 or 4 races, and if the shape is good, you know, he will obviously be keen for the World Championship, but only if the shape is really fair, you know. Like last year, the shape was not so good, so we didn't really see him target the World Champs. But I could see him, if he rides his 3 races, it's been a success. I could see him going for the Worlds this year in Ostend. You remember he won the Belgian champs there previously, so could be a good one.
Okay, let's make some predictions then for the season. Who do you guys think will become world champion at the men?
There's just one name, Mathieu van der Poel.
Yeah, I can't not agree. I think it will be Matthew, but I'd like to see Tom Pidcock there as well.
Well, I'm going to go for somebody different. I'm going to go for Laurens Zweek because it's held in Ostende and it's sand. And I personally think that Van der Poel is going to be lacking of rhythm because I think he won't have a lot of crosses in his legs. He will be fresh, but because of the lack of races, I think Zweek made a step. There's a lack of races. He will be about as fresh as Van der Poel, and I think he can surprise this year there.
Indeed, and obviously in the women's category as well, I think it will be really open race. Lots of running, lots of tricky sand riding. So I'd really struggle to put a hard estimate, but I'd like to see Alvarado take the win again this year.
Hey, can we have another dramatic sprint between Worst and Alvarado? That would be fun.
It definitely was, and I was standing there at the finish. It was such a tense race with such a big climax at the end. But here in Ostend, I think it's really hard to predict the winner. Personally, I don't think Brandt or Kastelein will be able to do it because I think they're lacking technique in the sand. Brandt is, of course, insanely strong. But then I think at the end it will be Vorst or Alvarado. But who? I mean, we could flip a coin and still not know it.
Yeah, I think for Brandt especially, she really needs a lot of crosses to really get into that rhythm and get up there with the technique. And indeed, the sand will make it quite hard.
Exactly, one mistake on this course, and you could lose 30 seconds, I reckon, you know. There's some very, very long sandy sections, and a small error at the start of one of these could force a very long run. And I think, you know, you'll need good technique, good composure, but also the strong legs as well.
And then let's just assume that the World Cup is able to get together a series of 6 races, which would start in the beginning of November. Who would you guys then think would win at the men's and who would win at the women's race?
I think last season, Twan showed he has some consistency about him, so I'm going to go with him. He also maybe is the better of the two out of him and Ede Iserbyt. That would be my bet.
Well, I would take Iserbyt then. I think he's, after last year and losing it with hypothermia in Namur, I think he'll be wanting revenge, you know. Sweet revenge. I think the motivation will be higher than ever, and he'll be stronger than ever as well. Still a young rider, so I think he's going to take it this year.
And then for the women's, who would you think there?
Well, for me, maybe Anne-Marie Worst. Very consistent rider, and I think over 6 rounds, I think she'll be the strongest.
Then I'll go with Celine Alvarado. I think she's a really strong rider. Probably would have made a very nice step this season as well, and hopefully she can show off that rainbow jersey.
Well, then I'll go I'll go for Lucinda Brandt then, because she's strong, and I think that's just what I think, that the courses that are left on the calendar suit her the best. The technical ones like Kokzijde, they got removed. Tabor is there, which she already did pretty good in last year. It was her first race. I don't really know what position she finished, but she for sure got in a good place. And I think that if she gets the momentum on her side, I think she can really be driven to get that, because also she's fully focusing on cyclocross this season. She's only riding Paris-Roubaix on the road and then full focus on cyclocross. I think it's really going to help her, of course, with experience of Sven Nys on her side as well.
Definitely, I think that's a really good shout there. And of course, we're keen to hear your thoughts as well. So drop your predictions in the comments, and we'll take a look back this time in 3 months. Hopefully, we'll have a World Championships and a World Cup Series, and we'll be able to see who was correct.
Yeah, for sure we'll do that. And then I would like to thank you guys for listening, and thank Tom and Twan for coming on. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. Let us know in the comments down below if you have things that you thought about this, or if you think we can improve some things. Tomorrow there will be a new episode. Then Twan, Issam and I will be talking about the upcoming race in Gieten, which is taking place this Sunday. Have a nice day.